Hey, welcome into this tutorial. I am Donna Freeman. This is Module 3 of Database Modeling. I'm going to show you how to map an ER diagram. If you look at my screen, I've got from page 77 of our textbook, our Zaggy Retail Company Sales Department database and our entity relationship diagram. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to turn this ER diagram into a relational schema. So let's take a look here and see how many entities we have that we want to diagram in our schema. So we'll count them up. You see my cursor. We've got our region, store, product, sales transaction, vendor, category, and customer. So we're starting with 7 entities. Now, one of the rules that we have learned in this chapter, chapter 3 of our textbook, is when we have a many-to-many relationship, we're going to create another relation. So check here in the center where we have our product includes sales transactions and sales transaction includes product. So that'll create an 8th entity for us. So we'll start here making our first entity. We'll start on the left side with the region. We're using Draw.io as recommended in this course. So slide on over to the left underneath Entity Relation and grab a table. All right, that appears in our workspace. Move it to where you want to click it twice so we can use one of these for our store and one for our region. Sometimes moving these things is a little tricky. Just work with it and get it where you want it. And then we'll start labeling our first region, our first table, which we said is going to be the region. Click in the box and start typing your title, which we're going to make in all capitals for our entity. Working on a Mac OS here. And below your title, you want your primary key. That's a unique identifier. We're going to identify that by underlining it. You can just start typing the name, and that's not going to be in capitals, but it will be underlined. Sometimes there's a little bit of a trial and error just to make sure you're in the right box. Just have patience with it, just like anything else that you're new at doing. You may fall down, and just get right back up and keep on moving. Okay, you might cry a little bit, that's fine, but stop crying, dry your eyes, get up, keep on moving. All right, region. Then we got our region, we've got our region ID. And then we're using, remember, our ER diagram. So what are the attributes? Remember, those are in the ovals. For our regions, we've got our region ID and our region name. Just click in the box. You see the dotted line around the box. You can start typing. Oh, brother. All right, and just get rid of the extra characters. And we'll get rid of the extra rows. You see these little hash marks on the side? I've noticed if you click on those, you can hit delete and make those go away. So that's our first entity that we have mapped out. Now our next one is store. Let's give that a title. Lost our title. Let me try that again. Add a table. We'll put this right underneath our region and change that title to store. And we're going to make it all capitals because that's the name of our entity, just like we did in our rectangles on the ER diagram. And each relation, we want to have a primary key. So that one's going to be, according to our ER diagram, store ID. There you go. When you click in the box and it's outlined in dotted lines, you know you're in the right place. Start editing it in the Mac OS version of this. Good, and what other attributes do we have for store? We've got the store zip. Good. Now, we're going to leave these two titles here for now because we want to show the relationship between the store and the region. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to add something we haven't talked about yet, and that is a foreign key. We're going to add a foreign key to one side of this relationship, and that's going to be our many side. So look at our ER diagram again, and you've got our region is located in, our store is located in a region, and the region may have many stores located in it. So we're going to have our mini side down here where we've got our crow's foot, and that's where we're going to add our additional column or attribute, and that's going to be our foreign key. And the foreign key is going to be the primary key from the other end of this relation. So that'll be our region ID. Good. And then we can get rid of this extra row. I don't think we're going to need that. We can always get it back if we do. So let's show that relationship between the store and the region. We're going to go over here to the left and grab an arrow, a line, and we're going to show the connection between the region ID and that primary key up in the region relation. Good. Hey, there's one other thing I want to show you, and that is, let's see. Good. We can illustrate or depict that the region ID here underneath store is our functional key by using parentheses and the capital letter FK, or this application also allows you to do it in this little box to the left. See how they have the PK for primary key? You can also do that functional key. Good. I'm wondering what questions you have about that. You can put your questions in the comment. So we're going to proceed in that same fashion with the other entities that we see in our ER diagram. So the store has sales transactions occur at it, or sales transactions occur at the store. And what kind of relationship do we see here? It is a one-to-many relationship. And we can also see the many side is the sales transaction side. So when we make our table for that, we're going to want to leave an extra space there for our functional key. So let's grab another table over here on the left. Make room for it down here at the bottom. Good. And let's start labeling this relation. So we said that was our sales transactions. And we'll label our primary key, which according to our ER diagram is what? Yeah, that was the TID. Transaction ID probably stands for that. And then what else do we see? Our attributes of the sales transactions. That's right. transaction date. Not going to make that capitals. Oh boy, my typing. I am lucky that I can even use a keyboard. I tell you what, I'm getting somewhere here. There. All right, so those are the two attributes that we know so far about the sales transaction. And now we want to show the sales transaction relationship to the store, right? So what do we put here? On the many side, a functional key. And the functional key we'll take from the primary key over here in store. So that'll be store ID. You following along? And remember, we're going to put what after the parentheses and the capital FK. Let us know that's the functional key. And then we want to show the relationship between this functional key and the primary key. So we'll go back over to the left in this draw IO application. Grab the end of that arrow and put it right there next to your functional key. And then grab the other end of the arrow or line and connect it to your store ID. Okay? Good. Let's move on. The sales transactions include the product, and the product includes the sales transaction. And we said this was a what type of relationship? That was a many-to-many relationship, which is going to produce an additional relation. So we'll call that additional relation includes, and that's got some special things that happen with it. So over here on the left, we're going to choose a different table. Check this one out. This allows us to use the primary keys to make our combined primary key from the sales transaction and the product. So let's give this a label. And we're going to call this one includes. Sorry, did you see that? Sorry, there's other people here. Okay. So where was it? Includes. So includes our information from below, our sales transaction, right? So we want our sales transaction product, our primary key. Let's see, we call that a TID for that one. Speaking of things in the background, have you noticed my t-shirt yet? I'll tell you more about that as the year goes on. Little food for thought. Why does she have a textured shirt on? And what does that say? All right, so this entity includes the primary key from sales transaction. And then it's also going to include the primary key from the product above. Let's go ahead and make that connection though between our TID. We'll add an arrow and we'll connect it from the functional key down to the primary key in our sales transactions. We'll make that pretty. Okay, and then let's pull up our product key table. I'll move this down a little bit, make room for it. It's pretty big. So we'll grab a table. When you see that four-way arrow, it's a lot easier to move it without changing the shape. Let's give it a label. We get our label from our ER diagram, and what's that one? Product. I'm going to capitalize it. And we will put in our primary key. And for this one, it says our primary key is product ID. Good. And then continue to use your ER diagram to find your other attributes. We've got product price and product name. Product name. Good. I called that an attribute. Did you catch that? And we know that the attribute synonym is what? Column. That's right, column. That was in our book. Good. And now we're going to show our relationship between the product and includes, and that would be by putting down here, and that includes attribute or relation product ID. So let's go back down here, put that primary key in. And one way we indicate it's a primary key is by underlining it. Good, and then we'll show that connection from this primary key that became a functional key by putting in an arrow. And there's something special I want to tell you about this as well. Couple things we learned is that this entity is a bridging relationship, and it's got two primary keys, and together they're called a composite primary key. Good, so we're done with that section so far, and now we want to continue to map out our product. Okay, and we're going to leave this space because we're going to need that. Because as you can see, the product has a couple relationships. The product is supplied by the vendor and belongs to a category. So let's work on the vendor aspect at first. And what do we need to add in to put in our vendor? Another table. That's right. Wait till we see that three-way arrow, four-way arrow, and you can drag it over. Giving credit for our ER diagram to our textbook. We got our reference there. And let's label this as vendor. And our unique ID is vendor ID. Surprise there. And we also see that the next attribute is vendor name. Okay. Let's see, let me think. I think that's it for vendor. So we can get rid of these extra rows. I know that's it. So I'm going to hit these little hash marks and delete. And we'll do the same here. Delete. Okay. Whoa. I got a surprise arrow here. Let's get this guy out of the way here. Come back over here where you belong. There you go. Now let's see the connection between the product and the vendor. right? So this is again a one-to-many relationship. We're going to add our foreign key to the many side, which is our product. And we'll do that down here in the relation. Oops. Click on that row. And what do we put there? Right, the primary key from the vendor relation. Go ahead and click on that box. And we'll put that primary key, which was our vendor ID. Notice that we don't capitalize or we don't underline it here when it's a functional key, but I may have been leaving these out. You can go back and put in wherever you have your foreign key, parentheses and FK, that indicates that's your foreign key. Good, and now we'll show the connection with an arrow. Grab this line, the end of it, put it right here, foreign key, and point to the vendor primary key. Okay, so let's see if we missed any. I think we're doing good. I think we got them all. Let's now show the customer. Oh, no, category. Sorry, category is next. But that does bring to mind that we also want to map out our customer. But we're going to move on to category, and we will grab a table like we've been doing. See that four-way arrow? Drag that to the place where you want it. Lines up with our ER diagram, makes it a lot more readable. And we'll type in the title. Got customer on my mind. This is our category. Category. Okay. And what do we know about our category? It looks like it's got two attributes, our category ID and our category name. So fill those in. Cool. All right. And do you think we're going to need any more of these rows? Don't think so. That's a fun fact. Why don't we need any more rows? Let me know in the comments what you think. All right, and now what do we need to do? That's right, we're going to need to show the foreign key over here from product to category. So we got to add a row. Come back over here to our entity relation selections, and we're going to choose row. We'll add a row. Slide that down. That right there. Good. And we'll name that with the primary key from category. So that's going to be category ID. And that's also a foreign key. And we'll put in our line showing the relationship. From the foreign key to the primary key. All right, so we have mapped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're missing one entity, one relation. That's our customer. Grab another table. Bring that down. Got a space for that, and let's label it. And its unique ID. Well, we can see the attributes. We've got customer ID, customer name, customer zip. And I'm realizing there may be some attributes that we may have missed along the way. So we'll go back and check and fill in anything that we missed, right? So we got our unique attribute, which is our customer. ID. God bless you for watching all these videos. I know it's not the most interesting thing, but it is informative. We all have a different way of saying how these things are done, and you may get some insights. Customer name and our customer zip. Good. Good. And that's all we have, so we can get rid of this row. All right, and why do I think that's all we have? Well, let's look at the relationship between the customer and sales transaction, right? The sales transaction is on the many side of the one-to-many relationship with customer. So that means sales transaction is going to get the foreign key. And that will be the primary key from customer, so we'll put in customer ID. And we'll call it a foreign key. And we'll put in an arrow to show that connection. Looks all lost in the moment over there by itself. So let's review. I know of one that's missing already, but we've got our region, right? Entity. Now we've got our region relation, and we've got our two attributes, region ID, region name, our store, store ID, store zip, and then we've got our foreign code key to connect it. We've got our product. It's got a product ID, product price, product name, and then the vendor ID foreign key to connect it to that relation with the vendor, or category ID. Good. Supplied by. Good. Let's go on to this one. Vendor, we've got vendor ID, vendor name. Category, we've got category ID, category name. Good. And then here's the one where we're missing something. Includes. Notice that includes on our ER diagram has an attribute. So let's fill that in our relation. Quantity, actually, it's called quantity. And then we get rid of this extra row. Good, still checking our work. And we got our sales transaction. It looks like it's got two attributes, the TID, the TDate, and then we've got our foreign key, because look, it's on the M side in two directions. So to the store ID and then to the customer ID. And finally, the customer has three attributes, our customer ID, customer name, and customer zip. All right, let's get this thing uploaded because I got bowling tonight and I'm up in my average, okay? I'm on a league and I am feeling competitive tonight. Thanks for stopping by.